I made 5 phone calls in 2004. I was 70 years old. I thought I was being practical. I didn't know I was being brave. I'm 92 now. Every one of those calls is still paying me back. Let me tell you who I called and what I said, and why at 70 I could still say it, but at 92 I might not remember how. First call, Dr. Helen Voss, my physician for 30 years. I asked her for the truth, not the medical chart, the forecast. What is likely to fail first? She hesitated. Doctors protect you from fear. I said, I am an engineer. I build systems for failure. I need the specifications. She told me, heart, then mind, then mobility, in that order, probably. I wrote it down. I built my systems around that sequence. The induction stove for the heart medication, years. The Tuesday system for the mind. The single-story house for the mobility. I built for failure because she told me where failure would come. That call gave me 22 years of preparation instead of surprise. Second call, Sarah, my daughter. We were still healing in 2004. The Sunday calls had started, but we had never talked about what came next. I called her and I said, I need to tell you what I want when I can no longer tell you. She was silent. Then she said, Are you sick? I said, I am 70. That is the sickness. Time. It moves in one direction. I told her about the ventilator, the feeding tube, the difference between heroic and cruel. She cried, but she stayed on the line. She asked questions. She wrote notes. That call created the red binder, not the paper inside it, the permission to fill it. At 70, she could still ask me what I meant. At 90, I might not mean the same thing. We talked when I was certain. That certainty is her inheritance. Third call. A man I didn't know. I found his number through the library. A grief counsellor. I had never spoken to a counsellor. Engineers don't do that. We solve. We don't process. But my wife had been gone 2 years, and I was still waking up, reaching for her, still setting 2 plates, still talking to the empty chair. I called him and I said, I need to know if this is broken or if this is love. He said, it's both, and you don't fix it, you build around it. That phrase, build around it. It changed my engineering. I stopped trying to solve grief. I built systems that accommodated it. The morning coffee for 2 cups. The porch chair that stays empty. The talking that continues. I didn't call him again. Once was enough. He gave me the permission to keep building around what I could not change. Fourth call, the hardest. My brother. The argument in 1964. 40 years of silence. I called him because at 70 I could still remember why I was angry. At 80 I might only remember that I was angry. At 90 I might not remember him at all. I called to say, I no longer know what we fought about, but I know I don't want to die with your name in my mouth as a stone. He was 73. He said, I thought you would call when you were ready. I said, I am ready because I am running out of time to be ready. We talked for 3 hours. We never mentioned 1964. We talked about his grandchildren, his garden. The silence became a conversation. He died in 2011. We had 7 years, because I called while I could still remember why I needed to. 5th call, not a call, an answer. The library, 2004. A young man asked me about 1940s music. He died in 2011. We had 7 years, because I called while I could still remember why I needed to. 5th call, not a call, an answer. The library, 2004. A young man asked me about 1940s music. I knew 1940s music. My wife and I danced to it. I said yes to coffee. I said yes to the next week. I said yes until it became a habit. He calls me grandma because his own grandmother doesn't speak to him. I am the call he makes when he needs someone who remembers how to listen. I built that by saying yes when I was 70 and still brave enough to be chosen. 5 calls, 5 openings. At 70 I still had the words. Until it is less awkward. It will never be less awkward. But at 30 you can still say, I was wrong. At 50 you can still say, I need help. At 70 you can still say, I choose you. At 92 you might only say, who is this? At 92 I still have what they built. You are not 70. Some of you are not even 30. But you have a phone. And you have people you are waiting to call. Waiting until you are ready. Until you have the right words. Until it is less awkward. It will never be less awkward. But at 30 you can still say, I was wrong. At 50 you can still say, I need help. At 70 you can still say, I choose you. At 92 you might only say, who is this? Make the call while you know why you are calling. Build the system while you can still operate it. That is the only engineering that matters. Until next time, pick up the phone, say the words, stay glad.